Once again, greetings. Glad Lawrenson here. Today, I'm going to talk about life cycle assessment of homes. Everything in and on a home has a lifespan. In 2011, FNNBOA completed a research study entitled An Exploratory Study on the Life Cycle of First Nation Homes. Understanding the life cycle is an important part for a number of good reasons, be it with regards to maintenance, repairs, or consideration of the various expected life expectancies of the various materials, systems, and components for housing. In fact, just about for any building. Yearly estimates for budgets for repairs and maintenance are needed to provide enough funds for the longevity and ongoing care of homes and buildings. Otherwise, housings certainly would fall into a dilapidated state, such as a house shown here with a multitude of conditions certainly requiring repairs. Some of the key findings of the report indicated design and construction of a new home is one of the most resource-intensive decisions made by the Chief and Council. Over the years, however, several reports and studies have focused on the problems with deteriorating and inadequate housing in First Nation communities. Much of this deterioration is a result of many factors, such as the houses that are too small and therefore overcrowded, and with inadequate and dilapidated kitchens and certainly bathrooms, washrooms. This report also suggests that many homes do not meet provincial or even federal building standards with respect to building, fire, electrical, or environmental codes. Well, a few more of the key findings indicate many of these homes were constructed or assembled without proper supervision or inspections. Homes in many communities are often poorly maintained by the occupants with no sense of responsibility for their own living conditions. Furthermore, many of the communities have no rental policies, housing standards, or bylaws, nor personnel with any responsibility for enforcing housing or living standards. A presentation by Vince Genero and L. Lafon in 2004 showed the ongoing costs associated with the maintenance of homes in the community. They pointed out that the average cost of repairs to a house is around $40,000. And general maintenance costs is approximately $27,000. These costs also increase if the house is neglected. Well, let's move a little bit forward. When we talk about moving forward, well, to better respond to these conditions, members of the First Nation communities need to understand that the life cycle of a home and all the operation and maintenance costs that it does encompass. Understanding the life cycle of a home is important, especially when it comes to estimating the maintenance and repair costs of Chief and Council owned homes. Life cycle costs are defined in the study as the total cost of a property over a 50-year period. These include maintenance, repairs, and improvement costs. Well, let's take a look at the 2016 census. According to the 2016 census, 44.2% of all status First Nation people living on reserve lived in private dwellings that were in need of major repair. This was over 6 times higher than the total population who lived in dwellings in need of major repairs, 6.7%. Status First Nation people living on reserve in band housing lived in dwellings of need of major repairs at an even higher rate of 49.4%, indicating a substantial need for the maintenance of housing infrastructure on reserves. Just for a point of clarification, the term Status First Nation refers to those individuals who are registered or treaty Indians registered under the Indian Act. Well, again, housing average expectancy. Well, when we take a comparative view, homes on reserve or in many First Nation communities appear to average about 25 years of life expectancy, often due to a number of factors. Let's compare this to a home off reserve that often have a life expectancy for a wood frame house with a concrete foundation that is in the range of 100 years or possibly more. The big question is what, why, and how is there such a significant difference? Of course, many of you may already know the answer to that. But of course, not all First Nation housing falls into the 25-year life cycle category. But there are other factors that play a role in a shorter lifespan of housing conditions, or perhaps decisions that can be considered to extend the life expectancy of housing. Well, let's take a look at some cost considerations here. The estimated maintenance and repair improvement costs for communities of a property over a 50-year period from the findings indicates the following. So what I've done here is basically extrapolated some of those considerations of costs based in the report. We can see in this little chart I've created the condition, either poor, average, or excellent, M&R, representing maintenance and repairs, in the original cost of the house to begin with. And of course, in the last column, the factor. And if we take a look at this table shows that home repairs and replacement costs in the First Nation communities can be much higher than those off reserve. So for example, a house in poor condition, 903,000 plus, almost 904,000, based on the original cost of the house of 180, so the factor of 5 times increase. An average house, 361, almost 362,000, again, roughly 2 times the factor. And a house in excellent condition, a little bit less, but certainly 305,000 and change from that 180,000, or about 1.72 times that factor. So when we take a look at housing off reserve, typically it's estimated that between 1 to 2% per year should be considered for ongoing maintenance repairs. So again, a fairly significant difference. Well, let's talk a little bit about housing conditions. I'm not going to get into all the detail, and certainly, like I mentioned before, perhaps many of you are very familiar with some of the issues regarding housing conditions. In the case of those communities with poor housing conditions, it can be argued that the chief and council may spend approximately 5 times the value of the house. For example, we saw that $180,000 as being, back in 2011, roughly the cost of the average house over a 50-year life cycle. In other words, the house now costs $900,000 or more of, we'll say, maintenance and repair work that's been invested. And this is part of, we'll say, the total cost or the life cycle cost of that particular house. Many items are expensive and would not be necessary if homes were properly built to building code standards to begin with. In many cases, the deferral of routine scheduled maintenance certainly will mean the asset will deteriorate faster, making it harder to meet the deferred maintenance costs. In communities where housing is well maintained and constructed to meet code standards by qualified trades, housing generally tends to have a significant reduction in the items that need repair and maintenance. Again, we saw the reflection of those costs in the earlier slide. Well, let's take a look, another look or another approach to this. Understanding the life cycle is particularly crucial for the evaluation of design alternatives that satisfy a required level of performance, those including safety, adherence to building codes, and good engineering standards. But that may have difficult initial investment, operating, maintenance, and repair costs. Thus, before homes are built, consideration should be given to alternative housing products rather than just the lower price of an item. Next, we will take a look at a common building material or equipment and how it can impact the life cycle of a house. So when we take a look at this approach, the life cycle cost of the total house needs to be brought into account. So if we take a look now, it's older homes will generally have their roofing replaced, new heating system installed around the 25-year mark. Consider the total cost of a piece of equipment such as a furnace. What do we need to consider regarding the cost? Well, the initial costs, like even we indicated earlier, the initial cost to build the house, the operating costs, so the energy used, repairs and maintenance, and certainly things such as the decommissioning costs, things that cost money such as removal and disposal, for example, of an old furnace. So a comparison is offered here of a furnace A and a furnace B, one that costs a little bit more, but has a little bit of a significant difference with the annual costs to actually maintain and use that particular furnace. Although there's a heating cost difference of over $100 per year over 15 years, the cost difference equals 100 times 15 or $1,500 minus $500 equals $1,000 in actual cost difference. So sometimes what we need to do is evaluate the value of furnace A or furnace B, or in many other cases, actually the materials and the cost that's involved to actually build the house and put it together. So not always cheaper is better. There's other factors that play into this. Well, while we're talking about heating systems such as furnaces, let's talk about, again, the life expectancy of a common heating system. We can see here that furnaces roughly have a service life of 15 to 30 years, whereas boilers 15 to 30 years, and in some cases a little bit more. Heat pumps generally 15 years, or an active solar heating system, if that's possible, 20 plus years, or electric heating 20 plus years. So again, we also need to take a look at the type of heating system as one example in our life cycle studies. What is the best, we'll call it value or investment for the money that's being spent? Sometimes a little more can mean a significance in the, we'll call it the life cycle of the piece of equipment, such as the heating system. The life expectancy of a good quality forced air furnace is about 15 years. After that time, the seals and the fan motors start to wear out. Of course, proper maintenance and the replacement of any worn parts have a bearing on the life expectancy of that furnace. It is recommended that the furnace be checked each year to make sure it's not losing warm air or heated air before it gets to the ductwork and into the home or around the house. Other checks should include the heat exchanger, flame sensor, pilot light, fan, and motor. Again, this is part of normal maintenance, and we will call it review for the heating season or prior to the heating season to make sure and everything's in good operating condition. Otherwise, if we tend to neglect things, then we're into the mode of you're repairing something that could have been avoided by annual checkups and maintenance. Let's take a look at another material, getting back to our house that we showed you right from the beginning. As we can see, it's certainly in reasonably, we'll call it the poor condition. Well, one of the other big items we can talk about is certainly things such as roofing materials. You can see here in this particular chart, life expectancy of roofing materials and roof systems. So again, in the left-hand column, the roofing material or system, for example, asphalt 3-tab, 3-tab premium, architectural, in other words, laminated, a higher quality. Again, architectural laminated premium, built-up roofing. So again, just to go through some of the materials. But let's take a look at the middle column, typical useful service life. So your typical useful service life of a 3-tab, we'll say a 210-pound shingle is what they call it, is 12 to 25 years. Now that 210-pound, by the way, is per roofing square. Okay, asphalt shingles, a little better grade, 20 to 35 years. and so on, 25 to 40 years for an architectural laminated. And if we go down to built-up roofing, 15 to 20 years for 3-ply, 4-ply, 20 to 25, or a built-up with coal tar pitch 4-ply, 25 to 30 years. But the common length of the manufacturer's warranty is also indicated in the last column. Certainly, we are concerned about the warranties on products, but sometimes that's just for the material. It's not necessarily for the installation by the roofer. So often the roofer, if you're lucky, you may get a 2-year, we'll call it guarantee or warranty on the installation. But then again, let's take a look at that sort of mauve colored area. This is an area that I copied regarding roofing and roofing warranties, some exclusions and limitations. So we can see here that some of the exclusions and limitations have to do with a lot of different conditions that could render the shingle not so much warranted by the roofing manufacturer, the roofing material supplier. So as a result, without limiting the generality, in this case, IKO, the company for shingles, will not have any liability or obligation under the limited warranty. So for example, any damage that occurs during or after improper application. So again, if they're not installed properly to begin with, there's an issue. It's basically going to null and void a warranty. Or any variations in the color and shading might not be warranted. There might be certainly what they're basically saying, some minor color differences in the shingles even from batch to batch. Again, let's take a look at the life cycle costs of the roofing material itself. So when we take a look at the life cycle and the performance, I've created this sort of chart here, or graph rather, of the asphalt roof shingle. So we can see along the bottom, we have the service lifeline, starting with certainly the number 5, 10, 15, and 20, representing the years. So a service life of 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. And the performance factor, if we go up the scale, the minimum expected performance is shown with that green line, horizontal line, or the optimum performance. So when we take a look at minimum accepted performance, service life is lost due to poor maintenance. In other words, either not maintained or poorly maintained. So if we go above the minimum accepted performance level, we can see likely aging without normal maintenance certainly can also decrease, but not at the same rate as one that is not basically maintained whatsoever. And if we take a look at the typical signs of aging for a 20-year shingle, it starts to typically show signs of aging in a period between 12 to 15 years. So likely aging without normal, without renewal and with normal maintenance rather, we can see that the red curved line gets out towards that 20-year life expectancy. Whereas the one with the minimum or lack of maintenance is going to be probably short-lived to around 12 years. So when we think about it from a point of view of life cycle and performance, certainly maintenance and repairs and ongoing review of even something like asphalt roof shingles, which basically many homes, regardless of location, have, certainly we can see there's a significant difference. In other words, replacing shingles every roughly 12 years, or would it be more efficient through maintenance to replace them every 20 years? Again, a significance in the cost savings when we think about the life cycle of an asphalt roof shingle. So there are 3 grades of asphalt shingles. The higher the grade, it's thicker, it's usually more durable, and certainly more expensive. But when we think about it, which one is going to be the best value for the money spent? Due to various reasons detailed later, most asphalt shingles and roofs last about 65 to 80% of the length of their warranty. So in other words, 20 years is really sort of what the manufacturer claims it does. But when we start looking at roughly 2/3 to 85%, and depending on the amount of maintenance and review that is conducted, it could be a lot less or perhaps maybe a bit more. For instance, a 3-tab shingle roof with a 20-year warranty may only last 15 years, and a roof with an architectural shingle carry a 40-year warranty, but only may last 25 to 35 years. So again, these things need to be taken into account. Even if they are not leaking, age and weather factors can cause the shingles to look bad due to cupping, curling, cracking, coming loose, or losing their granules. All of these, of course, defects in the material, causing potential leakage and other damage within the house itself. Life cycle factors. Factors that can shorten the roof covering material's lifespan. As an example, we can take a look here. We can see that improper installation. When we go to poor or inadequate ventilation, poor maintenance, the weather, certainly weather conditions, overhanging branches brushing against it and basically rubbing off the stone granules on the shingle itself. Things such as plant growth, such as molds or other materials that embed themselves or kind of try and root into the shingle itself. And certainly lack of annual inspection and maintenance. So when we take a look at this, we can see these are things that we should be looking for or considering, again, in the life cycle cost factors. Well, so consider just about any building material, be it siding, windows, doors, etc. What about major appliances? What about heating equipment, as I mentioned before, or other things within the house? Certainly we can see here on this house, it has a nice newer door, insulated metal door, but it's not finished around the framework. Thus, there's going to be some, we'll say, some weather condition issues entering into the home. Needed replacement of the windows. In fact, even the siding. Certainly the shingles look like they've been patched and repaired. But certainly if we take a closer look, which does not show up so much in the image, the asphalt roof shingles are actually in need of replacement. So again, just taking a look at things in general, we can see there's a number of factors that would be involved in the maintenance repairs required for this particular house. Performance and service life. Well, let's consider another thing. Does the product meet a recognized test standard? Again, when we are designing and building and thinking about even replacing or renovating housing, we have to think about the material itself. Here's an example to replace an old wood siding on that particular house. So for example, if we could go to the website on Mitten Siding, okay, we could take a look at it. It is basically an approved product that has been tested to a proper testing standard. Based on listings, we can determine was evaluated and tested and conforms to the Canadian material standard. We can see here CAN/CGSB-41.24-95. It was reevaluated in 2016 of 06 of 15 and reapproved. So again, a tested, proven material. So again, when we're thinking about materials and material replacement, we should be looking for, do they meet a recognized test standard? Not all windows and doors do either. So again, the best value is looking for ones that have been tested and proven and will stand the test of time. So in this webinar, if we kind of summarize it, the life cycle is used as a means to discuss the total cost of a housing during its life cycle from the build and the financial commitment, for example, as they did in the report over a 50-year period. This is based on construction build costs followed by maintenance to so-called end-of-life costs. What did it cost over that 50-year period of time? How much money was invested for maintenance, repairs, and so on? Consideration of life cycle and the choices made in the design and construction and materials can have a huge impact on housing and the long-term impact on the true cost of housing. So if we go back and we talk about the issues with housing and the condition of it, and those high numbers of housing that are in need of repair or replacement, we can see we could probably save and decrease that number by looking at things a little differently from a life cycle costing point of view, and also the material selections in the choice of materials in the, we'll say, even things such as the standards. It mentioned earlier, houses being, let's say, constructed, maybe not so much by skilled practitioners. So again, better value or best value. Certainly variations in building structure, materials, and lifetime itself can impact the results significantly and make meaningful comparisons certainly challenging. Again, I thank you for your time and consideration. Open for questions, comments, and feedback. Certainly, this is one of our pre-recorded webinars. Again, you can contact me, Claude, at clawrens@mnsi.net. A couple of things that you could look at is check out the FNNBOA website. In particular, there's an interesting basic podcasts on construction matters about no more disposable homes. So again, check out the FNNBOA website and the resources. Again, thank you. Wish you all the best. Take care.